Okay, welcome everyone. Um, Apologize for what's going on. The course was supposed to be given um, in person, and I know we had to go through the technicalities, the graph, math, and all these calculus. So I decided to put a tutorial just to go through some of the basics that you need to know, especially for the last the last lectures that will be required for your assignment. So the assignment covers two main chapters, and those are the only two chapters that have highly technical issues. So we have graphical analysis and a little bit of calculus. Okay, and what we're gonna do, or what you have to do for the assignment, is pretty much a prototype of what you have to do for the final. So the final will not have anything new that has not been covered either through the assignment or through the discussion board. So there's nothing new you have to expect. So you do have the questions for your assignment, and as I said, it covers consumer choice, and you have the lecture slide in your in Blackboard, and the other part is perfect competition. So what I'm going to do, the first tutorial now will cover consumer choice, and consumer choice is kind of could be new topic for some of you who have never had to take an econ class before. As we define economics from the beginning, it's the science of decision. We teach you how to make decision, how to use limited resources you have and make the best decision to achieve or satisfy unlimited need or want. And the concept of optimality is something we use in economics a lot, because your decision have to be optimal. In other words, make the best decision, make the best use of the resources you have to achieve or satisfy the highest amount of needs that you have. So, one side has been dedicated to the producer, okay, where we talk about the market and that was on the producer side. Consumer choice is a chapter that deals with the consumer. You and I, as a consumer, when we do have to make a decision in terms of consumption, do I consume or not? And we have that kind of decision to make every single day. And consumption can be of a product, can be of a service, okay, anything that can be used to satisfy your need is called consumption. The process itself is consumption. So let's say, do I take the public transportation or do I get an Uber to get to class? It's a choice you have to make. Why would you take an Uber that costs you more than the public transportation? You would do that because you think you will avoid, you will be there earlier, or you can use an Uber and have your laptop and make it more productive so you can use the ride and do something else while driving. So we make that kind of decision every single day. We make that kind of choice every single day. So here, the choice that we make have two main components. There is what we call the budget, and then there is the indifference curves. So the budget represents what I have, the resources that I have. Could be money, could be time, could be anything. But here we summarize it in terms of money. So my budget constraint will be represented in a two-dimension graph. Okay. So let's say I have two products, product A and product B. The graphical analysis in economics, at least at this level, we work in a two-dimension. We have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. So this will be a quantity consumed of product A, and that is the quantity consumed of product B. The budget constraint represents how much total of A can I consume if B is 0, or how much of B can I consume when A is 0. And when I join these two, I have what I call my budget constraint. So that's my budget constraint. It's an important concept because the budget constraint represents your limitation. It limits how much you can consume. You cannot go up there above. You don't have enough money to go there. You can consume here. Here you are called inefficient because you are consuming this amount of A and this amount of B when you have enough money to consume more of A and B, or you can be at a better point. You see here, the quantity of A and the quantity of B is very low. You could be there as well with the same amount of money you have, okay, on your budget, and you have more of B and more of A. So an optimal consumer will be on his budget line. That way you are. The budget line represents the limitation in terms of how much resources you have. And the resources we use here will be money. Okay, so that represents how much money can you spend on A if you don't spend anything on B, and how much can you spend on B if you don't spend anything on A. Joining the two, you have what we call the budget constraint. That was the first concept. The second concept, so the budget constraint is your resource constraint. But then you have the satisfaction, the need. Remember, there's always, economics, always a two side. There's limited resources to satisfy unlimited need. Now you have the need. The need are represented in what we call the indifference curves. The indifference curves is a curve that look like this, and that represents your level of satisfaction. So this indifference curves here, tangent to the budget constraint, give me the optimal level of consumption. So this quantity here, this level here, let's say this is 100 unit of A, of B, and then this here will be 120 unit of A. That represent my optimum consumption. Why? Because at this level here, I am efficient. I consume on my budget constraint, but also I am at the highest level of my indifference curves. If you read the note, okay, it's very well detailed and explain what is an indifference curves and what does it represent to be on indifference curves that is tangent to the budget constraint. When the indifference curve touches the budget constraint, you are at an optimal level. If you have an indifference curve that is here, you are not optimal because the indifference curves is under. So you're gonna have a point here, okay, but this level of satisfaction here that you're gonna have will put you on a lower indifference curves. Okay, the lower is your indifference curves, the lower your level of satisfaction. The higher your indifference curves, the higher your level of satisfaction. So when you consume at a higher indifference curves, the highest indifference curves will be the one that is tangent to your budget constraint. That is optimal. Okay, so to summarize, the consumer choice theory is I have resources, and the resource constitute my budget. I can consume two types of product, A and B. I will split my money in A and in B. First, I need to draw my budget constraints. How do I get it? By just having 2 points. Remember, when you draw a straight line, all you need is 2 points. And the easiest one will be the extreme. Get the extreme. And how do you get this one? Is you assume that all the money you have for your budget, everything is spent on A, 0 on B. You get this point. Everything on B, 0 on A, you get that point. You join them, you have a budget constraint. Once you have your budget constraint, you can now plug in your indifference curves. What is the optimal level of satisfaction? Is the one where your budget constraint is tangent to your indifference curves. And the indifference curves has to be the highest that you can achieve, and the highest is the one that it touched the budget constraint. An indifference curve that is here or there, it's good, it's high. but you never will be able to achieve. You don't have enough money to be here or there. What you have is to be at this level. So that's the basic concept. Now let's apply the same concept to consumption and labor. Here we were using two distinct products, product A and product B. Could be Pepsi and Coke, could be chocolate and candy, or whatever product you want to have. Now we're going to shift, apply the same concept, but use two different type of products. Now you have your week and number of hours that you can work. You will split your time between leisure and labor. You have a 24 hours day. All of us do make decision. How many hours do you sleep and how many hours do you work? So, of course, when you go work, the labor will be rewarded by income. And the income that you receive from your labor will be used for consumption. So when we represent the same concept of consumer choice, now using wage and leisure, we now will have on our vertical axis the level of consumption. And on the horizontal axis, we'll have the amount of leisure. So the idea is pretty simple. If I work 24 hours, I'm going to get paid per hour, and the total amount of money, I can use it for consumption. So when I'm at this level, it means that I have zero leisure because I went to work for 24 hours. So everything I earn will be used for consumption. That's how I get the first point. The second point on the budget constraint, remember, a budget constraint is very easy to draw. Just get the two extreme. Here, you get what you will achieve if the other one is zero. And there is how many hours of leisure will you achieve if your labor is zero. That will always be 24. Now, it's not always 24. It's 24 because we talk about a day, okay? So if it's a day, it's 24. If it's a week, it's 24 times 7. If it's a month, 24 times 30. Depending on how many hours. Okay, sometimes I can say, let's talk about a week. Let's talk about 5 days. In the assignment, I believe we were talking about 5 days. Once you have these 2 points, then you join them right here. It's pretty simple. Okay, how do you get this point? If it's per week, per day, it's going to be 24, which is the number of hours, times the hourly wage. How much do you get paid per hour? Okay, so let's say you get paid $5 per hour. Okay, your income is 5 per hour. So 24 times 5 gives you $120. So that will be $120 and 24 hours. That's your budget's constraint. Okay, now you can now have an indifference curve. So this is my budget constraint for a 1 day of 24 hours. This is what happened. My budget constraint is here. My indifference curves will be, let's say, over here. That's my indifference curves, I see. Now, this indifference curves is tangent to the budget constraints right here. It gives me a certain amount of hours. Let's say it gives me 12. Looks like half in the middle. And here it gives me 60. So what does it mean? It means that the optimal choice that I can make will be to work for 12 hours and have a leisure for 12 hours. Because if I work for 12 hours, leisure is 12, and I can use $60. So it's going to be $60, a combination of 60 and 12. And let me put it in other words. You have to make a decision in terms of how much time do I have to spend working and how much time do I have to spend at home. You people who work per hour know what I'm talking about. Let's say you work somewhere, at a restaurant, and then they offer you extra time. So your shift is, let's say, 6 hours only, and the manager comes and say, hey, you know what? If you want to stay longer, you can stay longer. Okay, that's when you have to make this type of decision. Do I take the extra hour and work longer, which means I'm going to get paid more and my level of consumption will be higher, but my leisure time will be lower? Okay, you have to make that decision in terms of how much do I work corresponding to how much I earn and I can spend, and how much more time I enjoy for my own leisure. The question is, what is the optimal combination? Now you know how to answer. The best way to answer is draw a budget constraint in terms of how much consumption you would make in total if you don't have leisure at all, and how much leisure hours you will have if you consume zero. You draw that, you have a budget constraint. You draw your indifference curve, which will present your highest level of satisfaction. And the combination that is tangent to this will be the one that you choose. So you have to make a decision and say, you know what? I can only work for 12 hours. The other 12 hours is my own time. And when I work 12 hours, I'm going to get paid $60 for the 12 hours. And that's good for me. That's the optimum level, because it put me at the highest level of satisfaction. And that's how you get right here. Now you see, this is an optimal point. A couple of things can happen. Your income can go up or your income can go down. And I believe in the assignment, your income went down. Okay, I'm not gonna do the assignment on your behalf. I'm just gonna show you kind of the basic steps of how to handle this. So in the assignment, there is a decrease in wage. Wage decreased by $3. When there is a decrease in wage, something simple happens. Your budget constraint just pivot going downward. You are here, your budget constraint goes down like this. That is when you have a wage decrease. When your wage increases, it goes up. Why? Because now here, it's no longer 24 times 5. It's now 24 times 2 or 24 times 3 or 24 times, okay? Because it goes down, okay? So if it was what we said here, it will go even down here, because now it's 24 times 2, because it went down by $3, and that'll be 48, okay? So when there is a wage decrease, your budget constraint goes down. And when the budget constraint goes down, the new indifference curve will not be this one. The new indifference curve will be down there. So your new optimal point will be here. Now you see, because your wage goes down, your level of consumption will go down, okay? And your new combination here will also go down. Now, two things happen. You see, you were here, and now you are here. So that was your budget constraint. This is your new budget constraint, this one here. And that's your new indifference curve. That's your new optimum point. That is when your wage goes down. Okay, it's very simple. It's very easy. When the wage goes down, that's the case in your assignment. Okay, and they ask you a couple of very basic questions. Is it possible that the person's consumption will fall? I don't have to answer that. You can see for yourself on the graph. Okay, it will affect. When wage goes down, it will affect your consumption. When wage goes up, it will affect your consumption. And how does such a decrease in wage affect the budget constraint? Just show you right there. Okay, now assuming the number of hours work decrease from 15 to 12 per day. Now here it's the other thing that happened. Assuming that the number of hours work decrease, how does that affect the total number of leisure? It's not also very simple, because remember, when I draw this, the number of leisure is here. This is the number of hours of work. Okay, so when I was here, I was working 12 hours, leisure 12. If the number of hours work decrease, if now I'm here, this is now the number of hours work, what do you think gonna happen to the leisure? The leisure will go up. because you split the 24 between work and leisure. So when the number of hours work decrease, your number of hours, the leisure time increase. Pretty simple. And draw a graph representing both the income and the substitution effect. That's an interesting part that I think you can do. And here you don't even have to, to take too much time. I will show you now because those are two tricky things, the income and the substitution effect. Using the same example, we're going to use the income and the substitution effect. And that will probably be the last part of this introduction. So this is my graph. That will be my consumption. That's my leisure time. And this is my budget constraint right here. So initially, remember, we had a budget, an optimal point right here because your indifference curves is tangent to the budget constraints. So I have an optimal combination of here. That will be my number of hours of labor, and that will be my consumption. And then what happened is the budget, your income goes down. When income goes down, you come down here. And when you come down here, you are at the new budget constraint, which is here. Now, two things happen. When your income goes down, you see this was your consumption, and this here, hold on. Let me make it clear so we don't get confused. So we have it here. That's my consumption. That's my leisure. That's my budget constraints. That is the first. That's my indifference curves. That is the first optimum point. Okay, and then your income goes down. So you go down, and now here you are, right here. So this is the second point right here. Now two things happen. Because your wage goes down, your consumption goes down, but also your number of hours work goes down. You were here, your number of hours work goes down, so your leisure goes up. So there's two things. There is what we call the substitution effect and the income effect. The income effect is you take this budget constraint, you drop it parallel to itself and get it down here, parallel to itself. And you're going to have a point right here that will give you the income effect. And then you pivot this parallel around your indifference curves to get this second point. So this point here, from here to this point, that's called your income effect. And from here to this point, it's called your substitution effect. And in this case, the two effects have a different sign. Your income effect is negative because it goes down, it reduces, and your substitution effect is positive. What are these two effects? Your income effect is when you get paid less. Obviously, it will have an impact on your income. You will have less money and you will feel poor. So your income effect will be negative because of a wage decrease. So that's obvious. Your income effect will always be negative for a wage decrease because it reduces your income when you get paid less per hour. But then you have a substitution effect. The substitution effect will now be the opposite. What is the substitution effect? Substitution effect is because I get paid less, I will substitute my hours of labor with hours of leisure. It's a substitution. I substitute one good with the other. The one good that is negatively affected will be substituted with the new good that is positive, that is not negatively affected. So here, what is negatively affected is labor. If you get paid less at work, you have less incentive to work. So what are you going to do? You're going to substitute your labor with leisure. And that substitution effect will be represented here. You see, you come from this point to this point here. That's where you are. That is the income effect. And from this point, you go back there. That's your substitution effect. Okay? So you will have a substitution between labor and leisure, and they will have a negative or an opposite effect. One will be negative, the other one will be positive. And you can have it depend on which type of good you are, and this is one way your income effect can look like. Okay, you can have a type of consumers, instead of indifference curves coming here, his indifference curves come here. So let's say his indifference curves was over here and touch it here. You see, that's a different story, because the total effect will even be increased. So his income effect will be increased. Okay, that is when labor or leisure is considered as not a normal good. But under normal circumstances, when your wage decreases, what happens is that your consumption will decrease, and then you will substitute that. There will be a substitution effect. Okay, because you substitute, and there's two things that can happen. Two things. You can either, and depend on the consumer, you can either be a consumer who substitute labor for leisure, which means you reduce the number of labor because you get paid less and spend more time leisure, or the other consumer will have a substitution effect, which is still negative, but will have more hours of leisure and less hours of labor. It's still negative, and that is represented here. So what you say is, I get paid less per hour, which means I have to work more hours to still maintain a certain level of consumption. Okay, so pretty much that's another logic. If you go to work and they cut your salary in half, but they offer you extra time, the incentive to take extra time will be there. And that's the example here. You see, at the end of the day, what happens is the number of hours work, labor, will increase from here to there. That's your substitution effect. So you are increasing the number of hours of labor, and by increasing labor, you are decreasing leisure. That's the substitution effect. So you substitute labor for leisure, but what really happens is that you increase the number of labor and decrease the number of leisure because you earn less. You earn less per hour, so what you do is you decide to work more so your consumption can still be high. Okay, so we're gonna pause here, and I believe this is kind of the basics for the first problem in your assignment, and the lecture notes are very clear. And as I said, if you have any question, we can arrange for a video meeting through Zoom, or we can have a phone discussion. Just send me an email and I can arrange that anytime.